It is a basketball show for the basketball fan. Welcome back to another episode of Open Gym. RJ Saunders here with you, along with John O'Leary, who's making it all happen from behind the camera and also on the board, making sure that we look and sound good on today's show. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to look into the Lakers' schedule with Trevor Lane in a few short minutes. But before we do that, your way on to the show is in the comments section. Leave a like, leave a comment to what you think about the show. Let's get a conversation going. And also, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We're going to do a lot of great things here throughout the regular season. Hopefully, going to get a lot of different names from around the league to get you the latest on your favorite team and the NBA as a whole. But before we get to Trevor Lane, wanted to start with this. We talked about it the last time we were here. Anthony Edwards said that although he didn't watch the older generation of ball players, he felt that they weren't as skilled as today's ball players. And the only guy that was skilled during that time was Michael Jordan. And then not too much longer after that came Kobe Bryant. I really found myself disagreeing with that comment greatly, but Gilbert Arenas, and the good folks there that do their show really expanded the conversation and asked this question. Would you rather have a player that has a high basketball IQ and less athleticism, or would you rather have a freak athlete and a guy that has little basketball IQ? So I really have posed a question like this. Would you want a guy that more is of the play style of that of a Luka Doncic, or would you like a guy like a Derrick Jones Jr. who's a freak athlete? Basketball IQ may not be the highest, however, there is a lot in which you could do with him. And this seems to have been a conversation for a while now, especially when we talk about the American game versus the European game. And Kobe Bryant discussed this a lot when he talked about AAU. With that style of play and with that style of game, the American-born players aren't really learning the fundamentals of basketball. They're really not even being taught the fundamentals and how to have a high basketball IQ. They're relying a lot on their athleticism because when it comes to certain games, if you can get 3 to 4 of the most athletic guys on one squad, normally if you're playing in middle school or you're playing in high school, sometimes even in college, athleticism can get you very, very far. But the caveat to all that is if you're not teaching the fundamentals of the game, if you're not teaching the aspects of how to manipulate defenses, how to manipulate yourself to where you can get to your spot and get your shot off, you're now all of a sudden now in a league in the NBA where everyone is athletic, or at least the vast majority of players are athletic. Now, instead of having a guy in which you're saying we can teach, if there is a player that's going into next year's draft or somebody who is coming from overseas or even in the G League that's a little bit more polished in certain areas than that one player is who relied on his athleticism for the majority of his career before getting to the NBA, you kind of fall by the wayside. And that's really the blessing and the curse of the NBA, isn't it? And that's why you see a lot more specialists in today's game. The isolation game is probably second to none when you talk about this generation and this era. It's a lot of one-on-one basketball. It's not too far away from the era that we saw with guys like Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, a young Kevin Durant, Allen Iverson, etc. But the basketball IQ for some folks really isn't to the standard in which we may have seen in prior generations. Now, you take a guy like Luka Doncic. He's probably learned the fundamentals since he was 6, 7 years old. That's how they had him start. They weren't trying to start him on how to jump the highest, how to be the fastest. This was a guy in which they were saying, hey, look, this is how you're going to get to your spots. This is how you make an entry pass into the post. This is how you back down, guys. This is how you should see the game. This is how you should see the floor. This guy was built in a lab almost, it seems, but not from the physical attributes, but from the mental attributes. When you look at a guy like Luka Doncic, also a guy like Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic isn't the fastest. He's certainly not the strongest. He's really making it possible for anybody with a dad bod to believe that they can dominate any sort of game that they want to as long as the basketball IQ is there. Not saying that people with dad bods can all make the NBA. Nikola Jokic is an anomaly on that one. Just follow where I'm going with this. If you are a guy such as a Luka, as a Nikola Jokic or any of these European players who, when the European transition was coming into the NBA, we viewed a lot of these guys as soft. They couldn't take the physicality of the NBA. Now the NBA has gone to a more European style of game. And guys like Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic are completely dominating this game, and they're not the most athletic of athletes there in the world. Now, we have seen guys who have both. When Gilbert Arenas and Josiah Johnson asked the question of, would you rather have a guy with high basketball IQ or a guy with freakish athleticism, you're almost stating that you've never really seen the two come together in a way to where you have just this anomaly of a player. However, we've seen it in spurts. We've seen it with guys like Michael Jordan, about a 48-inch vertical. He gets with Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson teaches him a certain style of play and an offense that worked for him to where he could score, but he can also get other guys open, other guys with basketball IQ know where to be in the spots in which they need to. LeBron James, built in a lab, both physically and mentally, and he was able to watch prior guys to him before he got in the league, guys such as Magic Johnson, guys such as Penny Hardaway, even Grant Hill, guys that were athletic, but they also had the basketball IQ. LeBron James turned that up almost by 1,000 because there's really no reason for a guy to almost be 250, 265, moving like a deer the way that he is, but also has the basketball IQ to make the right pass. I think quiet is kept. Shaquille O'Neal was a force in nature, and he had a great basketball IQ, one of the most dominant forces that we've ever seen in NBA history. We just don't see guys like that a lot. But I've heard this from Gilbert Arenas, and I've also now heard this from Kevin Garnett. It seems like the guy who wasn't the most athletic player, but got the most out of his basketball IQ and his athleticism, is now arguably one of the top 3 greatest players of all time, or at least is in that argument. A lot of people put him in the top 10, but it's Kobe Bryant. Essentially, they put it like this. Kobe Bryant had a Chevy Toyota-like body, but he pushed it as if it was a Maserati. And Kobe Bryant has always admitted, hey, listen, I was athletic, but I wasn't freakishly athletic. I was quick, but I wasn't freakishly quick. That's why I would love to have a guy more with basketball IQ, and we can find out how to manipulate certain aspects of the game to make you successful than just a guy who is a freak athlete, because now I have to take more of that time to teach instead of having you get on the floor right away. Look at a guy like Chris Paul, only 6'1", but is one of the greatest point guards that we've ever seen come across an NBA floor because his basketball IQ is there in such a way to where he understood how he could get to certain spots and also get certain guys open and know where they were supposed to be in order for not only his teammates, but the entire roster could be successful. And we've seen that with deep playoff runs that Chris Paul has had with certain teams he's been on. It's not always worked out for Chris Paul. He has yet to win an NBA championship. Heck, he says he went to San Antonio really just to get the assist record. And why not when you're playing with a 7'4" behemoth in Victor Wembanyama? Give me the guy with basketball IQ. I can put him on the floor right now, almost right away. With the game where it is now, you don't need to be freakishly athletic. And there are a lot of great athletes that we see in our game. Anthony Edwards, Ja Morant, others, kind of in that circle. But when you look at guys such as Kyle Anderson, probably wouldn't be a great example, but there's a guy that has a high basketball IQ. He plays at his pace. You're not going to speed him up. You're not going to slow him down. This is going to be a guy that can be that point forward for you in an NBA setting for any sort of NBA team. And I think that's why Minnesota wanted him when they got him just a couple of off seasons ago. Can we see more anomalies in which we've seen sort of like a LeBron James? Sure, but it's only few and far between. Basketball IQ is always going to win for me in the end, and that's why you have to give me a guy with basketball IQ before you give me a guy who's just solely freakishly athletic. Giannis, really a guy in which the Milwaukee Bucks said, we're going to teach him. He has the athleticism, but once his body's sort of rounded out and also teaching him the fundamentals of the game, that raw athleticism plus the IQ gave you the Finals MVP and also the NBA regular season MVP. How many guys do we see in the NBA who are being taught like that, or you're saying you're willing to put 3, 4, 5 years into a project? It really feels like Jalen Green has been that guy for the Houston Rockets. Came into the game with just pure athleticism, jumps out the gym, had a spotty jump shot, but remember, they said this guy was going to be the likes of Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady. We have yet to really see that, and I think he's going into year 5 now. Hopefully it is able to work out for him in the grand scheme of things. But if you would have had a guy like a Jalen Green who has a teammate in Alperen Şengün, who's not the most athletic guy, but has the IQ to the point to where they're calling him Baby Jokic, it's going to be interesting to see what Alperen Şengün is able to do this year. Basketball IQ always wins in the end. That's at least what they told me. Again, these are my thoughts. We'd love to hear yours. Now, when it comes to teams who are on the rise or teams whose stock is falling, it really feels like the Los Angeles Lakers are kind of somewhere in the middle. They haven't gone too high, haven't gone too low. But the schedule has came out. LeBron James and Anthony Davis setting up for another year. The Lakers didn't make any sort of moves except for one with their head coach in J.J. Redick. To discuss all that with us is going to be Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation, and he joins us next here on Open Gym. Welcome back here to Open Gym on 1010XL. I can't tell you how excited I am for this interview, not solely because we're just talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, but it's who we are speaking with, and this is my story on him and how I fell in love with his analysis. I moved here to Jacksonville in 2015 and was really looking for a way to keep up with the Los Angeles Lakers and also get insight from Los Angeles Lakers fans, but that were also well-written individuals. And this was a guy, when the Lakers weren't on just throughout the entire year, this would be an individual who would keep us up to date in what was going on with the Lakers. Also asked us very great questions to the fans to get their reaction on certain things. And I can't tell you just how humbled I am to have him on the program. He is Trevor Lane. He's the host of Lakers Nation, as well as the Front Office Show with Keith Smith. Make sure to listen to that show as well, because their basketball analysis is absolutely second to none. You can follow Trevor on X at Trevor Lane, and he joins us right now on the show. So, sir, I've been excited for the opportunity to interview you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much. That was an incredible introduction, but I'm happy to do it. Happy to hop on and talk some Lakers basketball here.
Absolutely. And, man, I could speak Los Angeles Lakers basketball with you all day, but wanted to get started with the schedule. It just really feels like whoever made it really didn't do the Lakers any sort of favors. You look at the first 10 games, and you just go, man, that's a tough trip there. And 5 out of those first 10 are on the road. So just talk to me when you first saw the schedule. What were your thoughts on it, and how important is it for the Lakers to get off to a strong start here within the first 10 games?
Yeah, I mean, the schedule, we knew it was going to be difficult just by virtue of being a Western Conference team, because the West is so deep. There's not going to be an easy schedule in the West, but the Lakers are always going to have a tough start because they're going to be a marquee matchup. The NBA, they like to cram in a bunch of exciting games right at the beginning of the season so that they can capture viewers and hopefully keep them around for a while. So you're going to have some tough matchups initially, and so that's where you get Minnesota opening night, Phoenix, Sacramento, Phoenix again, then they get Cleveland, so you get the LeBron back in Cleveland factor. So the NBA tries to cram in a bunch of those games early, so you know it's going to be a tough start. I did think the schedule was more favorable than last year just because the back-to-backs have been cut down.
Yes.
Last year they were one of the top teams in the NBA in terms of the number of back-to-backs they had to play. So seeing that drop back, I think that will help. But getting off to a good start, I think it is important just because of the current state of Lakers fandom. I mean, they didn't do anything this summer in terms of adding anybody in free agency or on the trade market. And so because of that, there's a lot of negativity right now in the fan base. And so a slow start, I think, would just compound that issue. So I definitely think they need to get off to a start that gets people excited about the team, because right now there's a sense that, man, this is kind of a lost season already if they don't go and get something done on the trade market by the trade deadline.
Absolutely, and that's something that I wanted to talk to you about with the roster. It felt like us as fans, we had sold ourselves out to a lot of moves that were rumored out there, whether it be DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, Klay Thompson in the offseason. Then we were trying to get into DeMar DeRozan sweepstakes, and it didn't work out. Now he's ultimately in Sacramento. But from a 30,000 feet view, Trevor, it feels like the Lakers were a different team when Jared Vanderbilt was out there and he was healthy. Now, we don't know how healthy he's going to be coming in to this year, but you hope that he's able to give you the level of production that he did when the Lakers ultimately went to the Western Conference Finals after the trade that they made to acquire him, as well as D'Angelo Russell. I feel like the team's also different when D'Angelo Russell is hitting shots and he's being the playmaker in which we need him to be. And we fell in love with him when we got him back. Now, all of a sudden, he's a guy that we're looking at as a possible trade piece to get somebody. It does seem like the Lakers, at least for the here and now, are going to be banking on health and those guys having productive years. But what's your thoughts on the roster and their chances of having a strong year and making the playoffs?
Well, I think one of the things that we got last year with this team was certainty, and that was the benefit that we saw with facing the Denver Nuggets in round one, is that we were going to know for sure, is this team good enough or not? Have they made enough improvements after losing to the Nuggets the year before? And the answer was no. They're just not there. They went 5 games with Denver. They do need to make some moves, but unfortunately, I think everybody recognizes that they need to make moves, and teams are holding that over the Lakers in trade negotiations, and it's made it tough for them to make a deal. Right now, though, the Lakers, as you said, they're going to have to bank on Jared Vanderbilt being healthy and him making a difference, Gabe Vincent being healthy and him making a difference, because both of those guys were essentially unavailable last season. Vanderbilt played, I think, 29 games, but he was not himself when he played. And if they're both healthy and if they're both at the level that we hoped they would be the summer before last year, yeah, those guys can certainly help you out. But then you got to ask the question, what happens with LeBron James and Anthony Davis? They played more games than we would have expected last season. LeBron played 71, Anthony Davis played 76. Do those numbers come back, and does that mitigate any effect that you could have from a healthy Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent? So I don't think this team is quite good enough right now, talent-wise and fit-wise, to get where they want to go. But I do think that we've gone a bit too far in terms of sleeping on this team and considering this team to be just this horrible team that can't get the job done or can't get to the postseason. No, I think we saw last season they can certainly get themselves into the playoff mix. Right. Can they win a championship as is? Probably not, and that's where they're going to continue to search for trades all the way till the trade deadline and see if they can find something to give them that extra boost.
You can follow him on X at Trevor_Lane. He is the host of Lakers Nation as well as the front office show. You can hear that with Keith Smith. Are there any names that are out there that do intrigue you that you feel the Lakers should be in the mix in terms of acquiring? We heard guys like Jeremy Grant, maybe Trae Young is there later on towards the year if his asking price goes down from the Atlanta Hawks. You're now also hearing rumblings that Jonas Valanciunas can be a guy that the Lakers are still keeping their eye on, although he went to the Wizards. But for you, who are a couple names that you would like to see the Lakers try to go out and get?
Yeah, I mean, I like Jeremy Grant. I think the asking price is simply too high on him right now, especially given the contract that he's on. I think he's an intriguing guy, though. If you can find a player who essentially takes, Rui Hachimura's offensive game and Jared Vanderbilt's defensive game and puts those together into one player. The Lakers need guys who can play both sides of the ball. Right. And while Grant's defense hasn't been great in recent years, he does have a history of being a solid defensive wing. So he's an interesting one. Cam Johnson with the Brooklyn Nets is an interesting player. There's a few of these wings that are out there. Dorian Finney-Smith could maybe give you something. The question for the Lakers, though, is what are you willing to give up in order to get guys like this? Because just in terms of trying to send out salaries, the Lakers being a Tier 1 apron team, that means that they're going to have to send out more salary than they bring back in a trade. So are you willing to sacrifice, a Rui Hachimura plus in order to get one of these guys? And how much better does that really make you? That's the question for the Lakers. But those are some guys that I think are interesting in terms of wings that they can target. I'm a big fan of Walker Kessler. I know the Jazz have considered moving on from him. He's not super happy there when he's not been in the starting lineup. Right. I think they really do need a big. Jonas Valanciunas is a name that they could certainly try to see what they can do there with Washington. I think they should have made more of an effort to sign him over the summer. He's a guy who was on LeBron's list. But they also like players like Wendell Carter. Miles Turner is on an expiring contract again. Could there be something there? I think they're going to leave no stone unturned looking at a lot of these guys. But again, the question's all going to come down to the price tag, because for the Lakers, if it's only one move that they can make, they have 2 tradable first-round picks, and if they can only make one move, that one move has to be enough to put them into title contention. And so far, the guys that we've talked about just don't quite do that if you're having to sacrifice one or more starters in Rui Hachimura or D'Angelo Russell in order to land that player.
Absolutely. And speaking of the second player that you just named in D'Angelo Russell, it's felt, like I said, at first we were in love with him when he came back. I remember he hit one shot in his first home game back in Los Angeles, and he was screaming, like, I've grown up, or I'm back in LA. And we love that, from D'Angelo Russell, because, we drafted him when he first got into the league. Now, all of a sudden, he's a guy that maybe a few Laker fans want to see go and be on the move or be a part of any trade package that we have in order to get a player such as maybe a Jeremy Grant or even a Trae Young. But I don't know. I still believe in D'Angelo Russell. I believe that this guy could really help the Los Angeles Lakers in their hopes of winning a title, and he could be that third or maybe even fourth guy, depending on how you look at guys such as Austin Reeves, to help the Lakers in their core. Do you still believe in D'Lo?
In the regular season, yeah. I mean, this is where people are down on him. He had a phenomenal regular season. He had arguably the best season of his career last year. I mean, 18-6 with great percentages, 41, 42% from three. Just a phenomenal season from D'Angelo Russell. But the problem that he's got is his playoff performances, and he was a bit better for a couple of games in the playoffs this past year, but he also had some stinkers in there where he was just not effective. And of course, we all remember what happened the summer before last with D'Angelo Russell when he played against the Denver Nuggets. So the prevailing thought is that D'Lo simply can't perform during the playoffs, and I think part of that is the lack of athleticism that he's talked about a lot. That he's just not a very athletic player. It creates issues when the defense really ramps up in the postseason. So that's the issue with D'Lo. I think he can absolutely help get you there, get you into the postseason, and I think his fit, particularly on the offensive end, is actually good with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Yeah. Defensively, it's another story, but on the offensive end, he fits pretty well with those guys. And again, he had a great season. He was the third best Laker last year, but I don't know that you can count on him in the postseason. He's also an expiring contract, so you'd have to sign him to a new deal if you want to keep him around next year. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of trade chatter involving D'Angelo Russell and potentially making a move. We'll see how it all plays out, but he's a great player in the regular season, can help get you there. But if the belief of the Lakers is that he simply can't get it done in the playoffs, and that's their goal, they want to advance deep into the playoffs with LeBron and Anthony Davis, they're probably going to look to make a change by that February. I believe it'll be February 6th trade deadline.
Trevor Lane, our guest. He's the host of Lakers Nation as well as the Front Office Show. You can follow him on X at Trevor_Lane. So it's been a few months now. JJ Redick has been named the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't want to put the pressure on him of, he could be the next Pat Riley. I mean, for most of us who remember, Pat Riley was an assistant for 2 years before he ultimately became the head coach of the LA Lakers. But I do think this is a guy, I think he won the press conference, the initial press conference that he had. I also feel like Coach K is going to be there kind of as his rabbi to kind of teach him the way. And in any questions that he has, he's only going to be a phone call away. I do believe that the Lakers front office believes in him. But you being there, boots on the ground, being in LA, how did you take the press conference, and what do you think about JJ Redick leading this team?
Yeah, I thought JJ did a great job at the press conference, answered every question. There was even, I don't recall exactly what the question was, but where Rob Pelinka kind of sidestepped it, and then JJ said, no, I'll address that, and got into it. I thought JJ did a great job in the presser. So far, he has said all the right things. We'll see if that translates to doing the right things on the court. That's much easier said than done, especially given his well-known lack of experience. But there was a sense that Darvin Ham often didn't win the press conference, and JJ so far is batting 1,000. So hopefully that continues. But I know the Lakers are excited about JJ Redick. He's a very bright basketball mind, and so I'm excited to see what he can do with this team. The question, of course, is will the learning curve prove to be a bit too steep? And that's going to be, I think, one of the subplots of the season. It's how does JJ adjust when the NBA schedule, when injuries and things like that, throw curveballs at him. How does he react? And so that's going to be something to keep an eye on this season, but so far so good for J.J. Redick.
Another guy that's in a Lakers uniform now that it seems like a lot of individuals are very high on is the draft pick of Dalton Connect. What did you think about him in the Summer League, and what do you think he's going to be able to do for the Lakers this season in year one?
Oh, I can tell you the Lakers were thrilled that they got him at 17. They did not work him out during the pre-draft process
Right.
because there was no belief at all that he was going to be there at 17 for them. They were shocked that he was there and so pleasantly surprised. They couldn't believe their good fortune that he was there at 17 for them, and they happily grabbed him. They're very excited about him. I think that he is going to have a role from day one. He's going to need to be part of this rotation, maybe not a major part of the rotation. Maybe he's the 9th guy in the rotation or even the 10th guy. But I think he is going to play. His offensive execution is going to be really important. We know he's not a great defensive player. He struggles there. Despite the athleticism, he struggles on the defensive side of the ball. But he is a 3-level scorer, can shoot from outside, can attack the rim, does a really great job getting himself to the free throw line, getting contact at the rim. So I'm excited for him. I think we don't want to hype him up too much to the point
Right.
where expectations are through the roof.
Right.
But I think that this is a guy who can be a rotation player for the Lakers opening night. And again, the team was absolutely thrilled to get him at 17, and for good reason. This is a very, very talented player, particularly if the defensive side of his game can come along at all. That's going to make him, I think, a very, very solid piece for LA moving forward.
Final couple of moments with Trevor Lane. He's the host of Lakers Nation as well as the Front Office Show. I can't leave him without asking these 3 questions. One's going to be on Kobe Bryant, of course, but we have to start with the Lakers' 2 stars. First being LeBron James. We saw what he did in the Olympics. It was absolutely phenomenal. Going to be interesting to see how he and JJ communicate, interact with each other. Are his minutes going to go down? You also talked about, with he playing 71 games, is that kind of backtrack as well? But I kind of want to ask this question because you hear a lot of different things from different individuals since LeBron's been in LA, but you're a guy that, I respect greatly and just want to get this kind of, just opinion from. What would you describe the LeBron era in Los Angeles? How would you describe that?
I think it's been successful. There were a lot of expectations that he would win multiple championships right now, sitting on one championship. But the fact that he's won a championship with the Lakers, I think it's been a successful run for LeBron. Obviously, there's frustration with where the team is at currently, and the Russell Westbrook trade is certainly an issue when we look at this era that I think set the team back greatly, and we can debate how involved was LeBron in that? Was
Right.
that really a LeBron move, and did that undo a lot of what the team had going for them? But you win a championship. LeBron has brought so many eyes to the Lakers. He's brought so much attention to them, and I know the Lakers' hope is that he will ultimately retire as a Los Angeles Laker.
Right.
And play his final game of his career whenever that comes, whether it's this season, the next season, 3 seasons, 4 seasons, however long
Right.
he wants to play for.
Yeah.
They want him to play his final game in a Lakers jersey. So I think it's been overall a successful partnership between LeBron James and the Lakers, and we'll see if they can add to that trophy case, if they can give him a chance. He'll be turning 40 in December. We'll see if they can give him a chance to win another title.
It seems like the guy that's probably going to give him one of the best chances is his running mate in Anthony Davis. This is a guy that many believe this is going to be on his back. If the Lakers are going to win a championship, it's going to be because of the play of Anthony Davis. Just in your opinion, how big is this year for the man in the middle?
Yeah, I think it's a massive season for Anthony Davis. He did not win Defensive Player of the Year last year. I still think he should have won by this
Right.
point. He is such a good defensive player. But this is a big season for AD, just as it is every year. The Lakers are determined to make him a bit more of a focal point on the offensive end. J.J. Redick has talked about not wanting to have those games where AD only gets one shot in the fourth quarter. They're talking about making him more of an offensive hub. I think last season we saw more of a full transition into this being Anthony Davis's team, him being the 1A guy and LeBron being more 1B. And that wasn't true every single night.
No.
But we did see more of a transition than we saw in years past. And I think that's going to continue. We'll see more LeBron off ball and more AD as the focal point on the offensive end. So they're going to be asking a lot of him on both sides of the ball. Again, he was remarkably healthy last season. That's not been the case for him historically. So we'll see how he holds up. 76 games played last season. And then that Olympic run, both LeBron and AD played with Team USA, won the gold medal. Does that have an impact on them in the NBA season here in terms of their legs and just their level of fatigue? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. But big season for AD, and the Lakers have big plans. They're going to lean upon him heavily, and I think ask him to be the guy here moving forward.
Last one for you before we let you go. It still doesn't feel real to me to this day that Kobe Bryant is no longer with us. And, you hear the stories in which former players are talking about, or even those that are in the media talking about just the impact Kobe Bryant had on them and their lives. Just for you, do you have a Kobe story in which you could share with us, or a favorite Kobe moment that you had in which you could share with us as the listeners here in Jacksonville?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, I thought the best representation of who Kobe was that final 60-point performance, the final game of his career. He had so many great moments, the championships won, the MVP, and all of that. But what set Kobe apart was his ability to push himself, to constantly strive to be better, to get the best out of himself. And it wasn't Kobe against the Boston Celtics, or Kobe against the Phoenix Suns, or Kobe against whoever. It was Kobe against himself. He was constantly trying to push his own limitations to become the best version of himself that he could be, and exhaust everything that he had in him. And I think that final game, it felt like, as I was watching that game, that he was burning out all the basketball he had left in him. Like he was giving everything that he had left, emptying the tank, I think, in a way that we hadn't really seen before. So it was an incredible moment, and I think it really spoke to just Kobe's whole mentality of trying to get the absolute most out of his talent and out of what his body would give him. And so that final performance, where we saw him do the things that he did and really, I think, exhaust the energy reserves that he had left in him, it was absolutely phenomenal. We talk all the time about athletes leaving it all out there on the floor. I don't know if anybody's left it on the floor to the degree that Kobe did that night. So that's the one, bittersweet performance, certainly, but I think it just encapsulated so much of what made him such a great player.
If you need any sort of Los Angeles Lakers content, whether you are in the city of Los Angeles or anywhere around the country, you go to Trevor Lane. He is the host of Lakers Nation, also the front office show with Keith Smith. If you want to look at the NBA from a macro level, this would be the first place in which I would tell you to go. You can follow him on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. This is the first time he's been on our show, hopefully not the last. Trevor, thank you so much for doing this again, and hopefully we can do this sometime down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to jump back on with you, and appreciate you having me on.
All right, welcome back to Open Gym right here on 1010XL. Thank you again to Trevor Lane for doing everything for us, from breaking down the Los Angeles Lakers schedule, talking about LeBron James, and just describing that era in which it has been for he and the LA Lakers. Hopefully, as a Lakers fan, this isn't going to be a season in which there's going to be a lot of shaking of the heads and eye rolls and heart stoppages in a bad way with the Los Angeles Lakers. Hopefully they can make one more good playoff run before LeBron James decides to call it a career. However, the Los Angeles Lakers, I spoke earlier in the program, just a team that really feels like they haven't moved up in terms of stock, and they haven't really moved down either, although ESPN has them finishing 11th, which means they would miss the playoffs this season. But I wanted to talk about a couple teams who I look at that I can say their stock is trending up, and then also a few teams in which I think their stock is trending down. And one team that I feel stock is trending up, don't know if necessarily they're going to be making the playoffs, but I do think they're going to have a stronger year than they had last year, is going to be the Houston Rockets. I think this is a team with Alperen Şengün, also Jalen Green, and you also have a strong core with Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson, Reed Shepard from Kentucky, who they drafted at number 3, I believe, is going to be a strong piece for this young core. And I do think that you have the coach that's able to put it all together in Ime Udoka. He's a hard-nosed coach, but also a young guy that can understand what players of today are going through. I do believe that there are 2 Texas teams in the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets that are going to be two teams to watch out for. But it does seem to me that San Antonio just needs a few more pieces before we look at them going to the playoffs and making noise. We already know about Dallas. Dallas was in the NBA Finals last year. But when you're talking about a young group that's not named the Minnesota Timberwolves and not named the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are two championship competitive teams now, the Houston Rockets do seem to be that team that is on the right path. Now, you're going to have to wonder, do they ultimately make a trade? Do they ultimately let go of some of these young guys to bring in a star? There were rumors that they wanted to do so in order to acquire Kevin Durant from the Phoenix Suns. That ultimately didn't happen. And then there was a couple years ago that there was a rumor that they were interested in bringing back James Harden. I feel like they did the right thing by not bringing him back, because I think that would have just hurt the development of your young guys. I think Alperen Şengün, Jalen Green are your two cornerstones, but the young core in which you have, a young core in which we've seen a lot of teams now do in terms of formula, getting young guys, having them grow, and when the time is right, you will see the results, a la the Boston Celtics. We're also seeing that in the Orlando Magic. We've seen that in the Oklahoma City Thunder. I really do feel like the stock is rising with the Houston Rockets. I just named them. The Orlando Magic are going to be a team this year that I feel like is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I do not know as of yet, because we haven't played any basketball yet, if they're going to be a top 3 seed. It feels like the East has gotten so much better this offseason with names such as Paul George going to the Philadelphia 76ers. You still have Dame and Giannis in Milwaukee, and now you have the New York Knicks acquiring Mikal Bridges when you thought Mikal Bridges was not going to be available in any sort of trade talks from the Brooklyn Nets. He's now with his brethren in New York with the Knicks, donning a Knicks uniform this time with his Villanova Wildcat friends, and with Jalen Brunson as well as Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. It feels like the Orlando Magic, a team in which people thought they would make the playoffs via the play-in, surprised a lot of individuals, and they were a 5 seed and an 18-point lead second half away from going to the second round and facing the Boston Celtics. That didn't end up manifesting because they ended up losing that 18-point lead to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I do feel like they learned a lot. I do feel like Paolo Banchero is hungry. We saw Franz Wagner. He didn't have the Game 7 in which he wanted. I think that this is going to be a guy that's going to have a bounce-back year. He understands that he is the second best player on this team, and he is going to be an individual that is going to show the rest of the league how much better he's gotten. I don't think anybody's sleeping on the Orlando Magic. If anything, I think people aren't giving them enough respect for what they did last year and what they are fixing to do coming into this year. Top 3 seed, like I said, I don't think so yet. Paolo Banchero does believe that they can be that, but I do believe that they could be one of those top 4 or top 5 seeds within the Eastern Conference that can make serious noise and probably make the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. The final team that I think stock is trending up, they won the championship last year, and it's the Boston Celtics. How mad is Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? How mad are they? That's going to be the question we're going to ask all year. But without a doubt, this looks like this is the best team in the entire NBA. How do you have a foursome like Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, and Holiday all on one team? How was Brad Stevens and company able to work all of that out? I think you do have maybe 2-3 more years of seeing this team be amongst the top teams, not only in the NBA, but probably nabbing the first seed once again in the Eastern Conference. Can they repeat? We haven't seen a repeat champion in quite some time. I believe that the Golden State Warriors were the last repeat champions that we've had in the NBA. This team now comes the closest, and it just seems to me that Jason Tatum did not like the fact that he did not play significant minutes in the USA's gold medal run in Paris, and it also feels to me that Jaylen Brown is not too happy that he wasn't called to be a part of Team USA this year, but certainly he'll be a part of that team come 2028. At least we all think and hope he'll be a part of that team. But if those guys are going to play with that anger and that style of rage and are able to put that onto the basketball court, it may scream trouble for the entire NBA, not solely the Eastern Conference. But as much as we want to talk about teams trending up, there also are a few teams that are trending down, in my opinion. One of them being the Denver Nuggets. I don't think this is going to be a team that's going to miss the playoffs. I don't think that they're not a top 5 seed within the Western Conference. But I do feel like the fear of the Denver Nuggets is probably not there as much as it was when they were making their playoff as well as their championship runs. I believe Kentavious Caldwell-Pope also said in an interview that the Lakers should have beat Denver in the first round of the playoffs. They had no more legs left. They were absolutely tired. But it's a team that does know how to win. Here's a now troubling thing that at least you're reading on social media. There may be trouble in paradise in terms of head coach Michael Malone and the front office not seeing eye to eye. Now, there hasn't been anything to refute that yet, but if that is the case, how is that going to affect Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and the Denver Nuggets moving forward? This is also a team that has lost probably 3 of their best defensive players over the last 2 or 3 years. You lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the Orlando Magic. You also have Bruce Brown, I believe, is now in Toronto. You also lost Jeff Green, who I felt was a big key reason for why they won the championship. He's now with the Houston Rockets, almost taking a Udonis Haslem role with that young team. I understand you believe in Peyton Washington, and you also believe in Christian Brown, but those are going to be 2 guys that are still young and haven't been in those situations, or at least asked to be in those situations. It is a next man up mentality in the NBA, quite like it is here in Jacksonville when you look at the NFL. But is this going to be a Denver Nuggets team that's going to be able to do enough and rely heavily on defense when you have Nikola Jokic doing so much on the offensive side of the ball, as well as Jamal Murray? Is this going to be a team that's going to have enough for when they go to the playoffs and the game really slows down to make another championship run? And as of right now, I don't believe that they do. Another team that has championship aspirations, but they're a little bit on the older side, and for that reason, my stock is trending down on them, is the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis, I don't know how much more of his game he has really gotten better at. Maybe his jump shot is increased, but going 1-on-5, going downhill the way that he does, it really feels like a lot of teams have really gotten fixed towards that and are learning really how to stop it. The Miami Heat, a team that just seemed to have the secret formula and how to slow Giannis down. Damian Lillard's getting older. It doesn't feel like Damian Lillard really likes the city of Milwaukee. Not saying he doesn't like the team, but the city of Milwaukee, it seemed like it affected him greatly. He also said that he was going through things in his personal life, and it made it hard for him to sometimes play the game of basketball. How much of this now is the Milwaukee Bucks team over the hill on? You have Doc Rivers there as your head coach, and he did an amazing job the second half of the year with the Milwaukee Bucks. But is this a team now that is going to be in the mix to win an NBA championship, with the East being so much better? You have the Indiana Pacers. We talked about the Boston Celtics. You have the Philadelphia 76ers. It's going to be more of a race towards the top than it is towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Again, they're a lot like the Denver Nuggets. This isn't a team that's going to be looking on the outside in terms of making the NBA playoffs. However, it's going to be hard for them to probably get to the NBA championship, and now you're going to have to wonder, are they going to have to make any moves with them being an older team? The final team, I know we call them the little brothers from where I'm from in Los Angeles, but it really does seem to me that the Paul George move from Los Angeles to Philadelphia is going to hurt them, and that is the LA Clippers. They're moving into a new arena. You do have James Harden. You also have Kawhi Leonard, but Kawhi Leonard has missed a significant amount of games while being in a Clipper uniform. You remember 2019, he was the darling of free agency. There was an earthquake in LA, and then Kawhi Leonard shakes the entire NBA world with his decision to go to the Los Angeles Lakers and brings Paul George along with him. But it never really panned out the way that we thought in which it was going to pan out for the LA Clippers. Now, you do have a great coach in Tyronn Lue. This is a team that won 51 games the season prior. But I do not believe if you have a guy such as Kawhi Leonard sitting out as many games as he is, that the Los Angeles Clippers, with James Harden at the helm and being your second guy at this point, is really going to do enough or be enough for you to stay at around the 50-win area and be looked at in the mix to at least maybe go to a second round, maybe even the Western Conference Finals, depending on how things shake out. This is going to be a huge year for Kawhi Leonard personally. Can he play over 65 games? Can we get him at 70 games this year? I don't know, and I don't think people are looking at him to be one of the top 10 players in the NBA. That may have passed. But if he did decide to leave Team USA to finish up healing and be ready for the Los Angeles Clippers this season, it does seem to me that Tyronn Lue probably believes that this Clippers team has a shot. However, with Paul George now leaving, you do lose a major key piece offensively, to where when Kawhi Leonard wasn't there, Paul George was a nice insurance policy. Now you're going to be looking at a guy like James Harden to be that insurance policy, and I don't know how far he can take you because he gave so much miles of his body to the Houston Rockets, and it really didn't pan out even with the Philadelphia 76ers, which was a great spot for him, in my opinion, in which I thought this is now make or break for the LA Clippers, being in a new arena, having a new team, new logo. What are they going to be able to do? It certainly will be interesting to see. This is just going to have to be a wait-and-see moment with the stock trending down for the LA Clippers. That's going to do it for us here on Open Gym. Thank you to John O'Leary once again behind the board as well as behind the camera. We will do this again next week. We're going to try to get another schedule in from one of these teams from across the NBA, see what they're thinking about their season and the team as a whole. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment to this podcast as we have more coming for you right here on Open Gym. We are less than 30 days from the NBA season, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So for John O'Leary, I'm RJ Saunders. This has been Open Gym on 1010XL.